Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Classical Antiquity Sidequest, a podcast covering topics from classical antiquity, the period of time is known for, as Edgar Allan Poe put it, for the glory that was Greece, for the grandeur that was Rome. Our next side quest is going to involve a movie review that is overdue, probably should have happened a while ago. Is a common movie that is on the list of everybody's favorite Roman history movie, for reasons that our guide for this side quest and I both are unable to understand. But we're going to do our best to get through it here. We are going to welcome Victor back onto the podcast, and we are going to talk about the movie Gladiator. Now, I don't want to give away the plot here. I really don't. I don't want to give away kind of the ending of where we're going with this. But I think that we are probably going to go in a little bit of a direction that most people who have seen the movie are not expecting. But nonetheless, it is where we are going to end up. So while I navigate my computer issues that I'm having right now, as much fun as this is, I'm going to let Victor just maybe give us kind of a brief plot of this 2000 box office hit.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for Ben having me on again. I'm excited to talk about this movie. So, Gladiator. When it debuted and afterward, it was a hit, and it sort of ushered in a period of once again Hollywood thinking that they might have some gold mine and big budget historical epic set in the ancient-ish world. It's what also made the career. It's really got the career of Russell Crowe into the stratosphere. After L.A. Confidential, he was cast in this movie, and it definitely made his name. So it takes place at the end of the Roman Emperor, the famous philosopher emperor, considered one of the great rulers of all time, Marcus Aurelius. He In the movie, he decides to nominate his trusted general by the very Roman Hollywoody name of Maximus Decimus Meridius to take over Rome until such time as Rome can become a republic again. Marcus Aurelius's ne'er-do-well son, Commodus, is opposed to this and secretly ends what's his name, Marcus Aurelius's life, and then has attempts to have Maximus, our hero, killed. He kills his family. Maximus escapes, but when he discovers when he heads home, he discovers that his family has been murdered by Commodus and his Praetorian Guard, and then he is basically kidnapped or captured and becomes a slave and gladiator in North Africa. But he earns such fame and laurels in the local arenas in that area that his gladiatorial mentor, Proximo, decides to take him back to Rome to fight in the Flavian Amphitheater, more commonly known as the Colosseum, whereupon he once again meets up with the Emperor Commodus. But Commodus cannot kill him because Maximus becomes a very popular
Yeah.
hero.
And,
Is that
and
where we
let's
are?
just interrupt there for a minute. You have to suspend your disbelief for a while if you sit and think about this movie, because checks notes, people died all the time in antiquity. But for some reason, this guy was too hard to kill. But continue.
Yes, but he had plot armor at this point. Maximus again continues to gain fame in the Colosseum. When Commodus returned to Rome, he had instituted 150 days of gladiatorial games for the people of Rome. And as Maximus gains fame, he also becomes involved in a conspiracy to overthrow Commodus, right? To get the senators to overthrow Commodus, but the conspiracy is discovered. And finally, in our final bit of the movie, Commodus severely wounds Maximus and then fights him to basically kill Maximus in front of the crowd in the Colosseum to gain sort of popular ascendancy over him. But Maximus, wounded as he is, still manages to defeat Commodus in single combat.
Spoilers, guys.
Sorry. Uh, the movie is 26 years old. And thus, and then Maximus dies, thinking, I guess, that they are going to bring the Republic back in the wake of his death, and then he is reunited with his family in the afterlife.
Yeah. So that movie is interesting because it could have ended really quickly if you think about it at the beginning, when Commodus says, "Hey, look, my dad is dead. He wants me to be the emperor." And then someone could have just shown up and said, "No, he didn't. He left a will." And in his will, he made Maximus emperor, which we know that has happened before because none other than Julius Caesar did it, which is how we ended up with Octavian. Okay. That little brat.
It's
And
even
I'm just saying the whole start of the movie involves Marcus Aurelius having thoughts for posterity, plainly aware he's going to die. Like he knows he's going to die. So where is his will? He's got people to do this stuff, right? He's got a guy. I guarantee you there was a guy for that.
well, in this case, in some sense, it's a more historically accurate, perhaps part of this is, but the movie is not accurate in the sense that Marcus Aurelius is opposed to Commodus being emperor. What had happened in the previous, there had been a really good tradition that was started, and it lasted for four emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, and then Antoninus Pius, and then Marcus Aurelius, where an emperor picked his successor years before, adopted him. With the Romans adopted people all the time, adopted them as their son, and groomed that person to become the next emperor. And that succeeded for about 90 years. And we had the four, the five good emperors. It was actually Marcus Aurelius who ended that really good tradition of sort of handpicking a good successor and had his son, Commodus, inherit the throne. And Commodus proved to be he proved to be very unsuitable.
Right. And here was the issue that I took with that primarily is that decline narrative is so lazy and so uninspired. And here none of it really made much sense because having skimmed through this movie today to prepare
Yeah.
again for this, I'd seen it before, and I think you got a lot of my angry texts when I first started watching it about the problems with this movie. You actually never see why Commodus is so bad. You just get the sense that he's kind of soft, he's kind of a wuss, and he's not manly compared to Russell Crowe, who, as we know, is fighting around the world all the time. So I don't, I think that this movie just follows a very lazy trope of Commodus is responsible for the death of an empire that continued for what, like 1,200 years after he died, which is just mind boggling. Look, it's just impossible to say how poor of a historian you have to be to buy into that narrative. It just boggles the mind.
It's an easy one to get into, and I agree with you that this movie has a lot of just sort of, just keep going, go with it, don't think too hard about it, plot points. It's an easy one. It's an easy story to tell because Marcus Aurelius is so famous. The Meditations, he really was, as for all we can see, a philosopher king who really viewed the job as he is a servant who tried to serve and do well in job, trained to do so philosophically. And then his son, who whose son was not. His son wanted to basically party and enjoy the fruits of being the emperor rather than viewing it as a job. And so I think that lends itself, it does lend itself to that sort of storyline. I mean, Gibbon in his Fall of the Roman Empire, right? The rise and history of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. He does begin his book. He does begin with the end of the five good emperors, of which Aurelius was one. Not so much that it was the end of Rome, but it certainly was the beginning of a sort of long, slow decline.
But that decline and mine again, mind-boggling is what I was trying to say. But then I was trying to make it an adverb and throw a ly on the end of it, an ly, and it was just throwing me off. It's too late in the day for it, apparently. That narrative only works if you make historical assumptions that just are not based in fact.
Right.
Because there were plenty of moments of collapse or retraction and then growth. And there were plenty of other people who were more responsible for the quote decline and quote fall of the Roman Empire. But that empire continues for so long. I don't know why we stick Commodus with it. It only works if you adopt this insanely Eurocentric narrative of the empire itself and ignore kind of the rest of it in the eastern part of it. But what would have made this a better movie, and I don't want to spend time talking about what's historically wrong with it because we could just be here forever, right?
Right.
If you're going to make this movie, you should make it about what Tacitus covers with Tiberius and with Germanicus, because there's a lot of talk. I was reading this book before we got a puppy, and then I'm not able to, because my mornings are more spent on the puppy, read in the morning. But there was discussion in there about maybe there was a chance for the Republic to come back, and you get the sense that everybody had poured their hopes into Germanicus and what Germanicus could have been, right?
It was famously maybe poisoned out there, right?
Exactly. And so I think that would have made it a better story. It would have made the history easier and more accurate to tell, and it would have flowed better than I think that this does, especially because I want to talk about the flow for a minute. If
Let's
we could
do
just
it.
talk.
And just really quickly, yes. And that part of that story is actually covered in a couple episodes of the one I keep always coming back to is my favorite Roman piece of, TV or movie fiction is I, Claudius. But of course, we wouldn't have had the gladiators, right? We got to get some gladiators in there. So let's go. Let's talk about the flow. I got plenty of petty little complaints about
Oh,
the movie that I can annoy
this
people with,
movie is over 2.5 hours long.
and
It
it
does
feels
not.
like it.
It does. Yeah, it does because there are so many establishing shots. There are so many crowd shots. There are so many slow motion moments. There are so many times, and I could be wrong on this because I wasn't watching it that closely, but I swear to God, in that first hour, which is about how long it takes for him to become a gladiator, which is only the title of this movie, right? It would make sense to start him off as a freaking gladiator, okay? But I think that Aurelius, who's dying and has the energy to talk with everybody, but not calling a scribe to dictate a will, whatever. I will never get over that. I think he has the same conversation with Maximus and what's his daughter's name?
Lucilia or
Yes. All right. So with her about the shortcomings of Commodus.
right.
So within this early part, we get it fed to us twice, which sets a pacing problem for the rest of the film. You could have easily cut out 30 or 40 minutes of this movie by taking out all the unnecessary scenes of people walking, of these giant crowds. How many gladiator fights do we need to really know that this is a movie about gladiators and gladiator fights, which is not even really about if you think about it. But how many gladiator fights is too many gladiator fights in this movie?
Well, how many does the movie give us? The movie gives us what, three, right?
Three, yeah.
Three. The ones
One
where,
with
well,
tigers.
actually, in reality, it gives us many. It's just three in the Colosseum. Um,
Well, does that count the final one with Commodus? I think that would be
I
four.
right. It gives us three or four in the Colosseum, and then it gives us one or two in North Africa, right? One thing that annoys me about sometimes gladiator stuff is, but I get it. But it's very Hollywood. Why do why do our very skilled military heroes in these movies, why do they have to kill six people? Why do they have to kill five? Just kill me one or two in a hard fought or a show of skill for the Hollywood audience, but just to kill six, it always seems to me just sort of kung fu magic stuff to kill seven or five or six gladiators or other folks in these battles when it's hard enough to kill one person if you've got a sword, right? People are harder to kill than I imagine we think. And they always do these things where, so Maximus has to kill six people in this fight, as if he was again, Obi-Wan Kenobi, versus the useless droids in the Clone Wars movies and stuff. Um,
Yeah, you make some good points there. I do think part of the part of what was going on was, and I don't want to insult this movie too much, but I will anyway, because Monica Serino, who's been a guest on this podcast twice, has written about this, and she said part of the reason, or the big reason, that this movie is so popular
uh-huh.
is because it came out in 2000. And if you'll allow me to go on a rant about boomers here for a minute,
All right.
let's just lay out the ground rules here for the purpose of this conversation. The boomers are the worst generation in history. There is no generation more selfish, self-absorbed, and less willing to take personal responsibility for anything than the boomers. So once you understand that, then we can continue with this point of the podcast. Okay. If you want more information about this, you can just call into the podcast. I'll give you my email address. Just drop me a note in the comments, whatever. I've got the receipts for this. Okay. This movie came out in 2000. It followed years of investigations in the Clinton administration. And there was kind of a malaise, if you will, in the country at this time about the lack of morality, the perceived lack of morality. Okay. And part of what got this is not getting into a political discussion, but George W. Bush got elected in part. He would go around and he'd hold up his right hand to mock Clinton, who swore to tell the truth, but he lied under oath based on what the definition of is, as we remember. Okay.
All right.
So what Monica had pointed out was part of the reason that this movie's so popular is because it's sort of a call to restoration, which is what people were feeling at the time. And by people, I mean self-centered, self-absorbed boomers who were saying, oh, well, back in my day, everything was better. When I was growing up, we had elected leaders with morals and they did everything perfect. And I'm saying to myself, that's right, because you didn't have boomers in office then. Because who were the two candidates at this time? Boomers, right? So really, this is your fault, boomers. Okay. So you not only stick us with this whole morality crap for this election, you then also stick us with this terrible movie by making it so popular. Okay. So, but Monica makes a very good point about why this movie was so popular. She did not make the point that I made, that it's all the boomers' fault. But I will make that point and I will not run from it.
I think definitely the character of the character of Maximus. I think Russell Crowe does have a star-making turn in it, even if he's kind of a one-note character, right? He doesn't really show much. I don't know. I don't see much of an arc, but it's good to see Russell Crowe on there. It's a very simple plot in the sense I want revenge for my family. I do think it's a star-making turn by Russell Crowe, but I actually,
He was
watched
good
it
in it.
again. He's
He
good.
was, yeah.
So was Joaquin Phoenix. Um, Ironically, the real Commodus was sort of was a very athletic guy and was apparently very skilled in a lot of these gladiatorial arts and was an amazing archer. Apparently, he really did hang out in in the gladiatorial arena and hung out with gladiators, which lowered him in the eyes of the senators. So in this movie, you're right. He is presented as sort of a wuss and weak when, I mean, some of the stories about Commodus are horrifying stories, so it's probably a lot of exaggeration. Um, he ended up being strangled in a tub by a wrestler that his wife set him up for. He actually had Lucilia, he had Lucilia killed for being involved in a plot against his life. So she dies. She doesn't manage to make it to Gladiator 2 in real life, the sequel. Um, I mean,
Yeah. And
this
was it,
movie, this
was it,
movie has to me, my rant is this movie and I love this. I was so excited to watch it. I remember leaving the theater the same way I left the theater after the new Disney Star Wars, The Force Awakens, thinking, okay, yay, but sort of walking, looking down, thinking, huh, have I just been fooled? In reality, is that movie garbage? And I kind of had that same sense with Gladiator. You think it's a good movie, it's sort of you're being fooled, but from the beginning, there is a lot of stuff there that just that's hidden with, big music, music at the appropriate times to go with our emotions. I mean, I'll be on the end scene where he's dying and he's in the Coliseum and
Which
he's
took
giving
too long. Every
it took
scene in
too
this
long.
movie just went on forever.
And they start piping in the sort of
Your
the
favorite music.
my favorite kind of music, the cliche, the wailing lady music that is supposed to be a shorthand of the last 30 years for this is ancient times, or this isn't the modern world anymore. That wailing music lady. It's I mean, this movie has, what does it have? It has our flaming balls of fire. Uh it has it has our it even at the beginning, the Roman soldiers look so good. I'm like, okay, somewhat accurate-ish armor. All right, fine. And then the moment the Germans attack, it seems to happen in all these movies. The moment these Germans attack, the Romans are letting them run through their lines. And then it devolves, these battle scenes devolve into one
Man
guy
on
versus
man.
one guy with a sword, which is the whole point of not doing in a battle. So if you watch that battle scene again, the Germans attack, they run, and then right away the camera pans back and you see them, from what I can tell, breaking the line fairly easily.
And why would you shoot fire where you're gonna have the engagement and you're surrounded by woods, notoriously flammable objects everywhere?
Correct.
I don't I don't understand it. I mean, it looks cool,
It looks cool.
but
People love fire. It's the from what we know historically, those kinds of weapons were used during sieges, and it was very rare to light stuff like that on fire. It's probably a lot harder than we think. And fire, like a lot of, is very unreliable, even if the
and
initially works the way you
unpredictable.
want. Right. It can then, things can happen that you don't want to happen.
What if the wind changes?
What if exactly? And so, or just smoke inhalation. I don't know. That seems
Well, yeah, and let's talk though about who was good. Uh Connie Nielsen, who played Lucilla, or I feel like I'm mispronouncing her name, but
Lucille. I
okay,
think you're right.
she was good in this, but her character was so, it was just so tropey. It was so noble Roman woman stereotype. And she has been great in a lot of things. She was in, she had a small part, I think, in Rushmore. Um,
I really liked her in a crappy but wonderfully watchable over and over again movie, Keanu Reeves, The Devil's Advocate.
right. I was going to say that she was in
Okay, yeah,
that. She was good in
it's
that.
great.
And I did not realize she was also in Wonder Woman and Justice League. She was the Amazonian
Oh
queen.
yeah, okay,
She was very good in that.
yeah.
So I feel like she was good, but her, and she comes back for Gladiator 2, which we're not going to get into today. We don't have enough time for that. Um, she was good in it. And again, there's a lot of really good actors in this, but I don't understand. I lost the movie, the plot lost me from the beginning. Okay. Um, in large part, the pacing at the beginning was bad. There's this long, slow burn. Sorry to use that here, getting us to the fight with the Germans. Just show it. It's a visual medium. Just show the fight. One of the great things about the Bourne Identity was there's just a lot of action from the word go. Okay.
Right.
So just show us that. All right. Then you have Aurelius, for some reason, say, I want to restore the Republic. Okay. Well, why? You don't really get an explanation as to why he wants to do that at all. He just says, there's this dream and we need to have it.
It's just
And
so right. That
but
whole,
this is
it's
the
a
part.
whisper, the greatness of Rome. It was a whisper. I guess the whisper is bringing back the Republic, which
By then, yeah, it was a myth. It was complicated. They acted like it was there. But here's the part that got really confusing because he says to Maximus, you have to go because Rome is corrupt and you've not been corrupted by Rome. Okay. But the only thing about Rome when you get there that's corrupt is Commodus, right? Which, if you key it back, that makes Marcus Aurelius corrupt, right? Because
yeah,
it's his child, it's his lineage, right? So you never really saw what was so corrupt about Rome, that was so problematic about Rome, that whatever government system was in place was not working and it was producing a problem. That the film, it should have shown that because
right. And it
tyranny is
doesn't.
bad.
Because think of it this way. Well, if it's that corrupt, they seem to have enough money to pay the soldiers to defend the frontiers. When Maximus in that scene, he talks about, tell me about your home, and he starts talking about how his kitchen garden herbs smell and all that. That seems safe, right? In other words, Rome's just a city, and who care? I mean, in that sense, you still have to govern the provinces. So when you say bring back the Republic, people who don't know much about Roman history don't realize how corrupt, when Rome was a republic, their system of governing the provinces was far more corrupt than it was in the time of the empire. In fact, it was the rule of the emperors that brought good government to their conquered areas that then became provinces and became sort of a commonwealth. When Rome
Yeah.
was a republic, the governors that they would send out to govern these places would steal the place blind
And then be
to fund
prosecuted
it,
for it.
and some were prosecuted,
Yeah.
correct, but to fund their careers, their election
Caesar.
candidacies in in Rome. So to bring back the Republic would have, again, ironically, would have made the governing of the provinces far worse.
Right. And this isn't a soft endorsement of tyranny or autocratic rule here, just for everybody's who's listening to this. Don't think we're doing some meta subtext thing to this. But what we are saying is this storyline doesn't make sense because if Rome is corrupt, you have to show it in, again, a visual medium. And I think that that's where Ridley Scott, in one of many places, he dropped the ball. I mean, the Senate,
Right.
those people didn't seem bad. When Commodus gets there, they're saying, hey, there's a plague. We need to do something about the water supply.
And they don't, but you're right, they don't show that. They don't show some lack of care for folks going. They don't show establishing scenes to make you understand, which would not have taken long to do, and
Look,
you could have
you
had
could
that
have cut out
in the
all the
film.
slow-mo and done one more scene showing how bad Rome was, right? I
I
mean,
that brings me to a point about Ridley Scott, right? Ridley Scott has fallen quite far in my estimation of him as a director in the last few years. To me, seems to make well-made junk. In this battle scene, for example, and then in the fight scene at the end, for no reason that I can tell, he will decide to use a very shaky camera, or he'll do these kind of like a Saving Private Ryan. He'll do these basically these beats of with the camera in slow motion that doesn't really go with, say, an ancient style battle. It might go with a World War II battle where there's concussive sounds and bombs and things like that. But he does this stylized sort of stuff with his battle scenes that all it does is kind of confuse and irritate you. uh, that to me is there's a lot of sort of cinematic choices on his part that when it's clean, the best part of that movie was probably the fight between Maximus and that guy Tigris the Gaul, right? Where they bring the lions out a little bit. It felt pretty clean. I know what's going on. It was well done, but a lot of the other stuff just it doesn't it seems somewhat confusing and over stylized, especially parts of that battle at the
spe
beginning.
speaking of confusing, why is Commodus trying to execute Maximus around all his troops when, if one thing history has taught us, it is that the troops love to mutiny and go
Right.
on strike
Especially Roman soldiers, yes.
and would immediately revolt if word got out that Maximus, who they all loved. You had that long establishing shot of him walking through the
Right.
line, right,
Yeah.
which they kept repeating ad nauseum every time.
With the
Okay.
music.
Right. With your favorite music. Why would he kill him there?
It speeds up the plot, but you're right. In fact, that's the other thing is a general, yes, a general getting proclaimed emperor by his troops is going to start to become a very common thing. Right there as Commodus is strangled in a tub. And that's the point where Rome is you can't disguise the fact that Rome, ever since Augustus and Julius Caesar, was basically a military dictatorship. And exactly, you're going to kill this general in by a beloved army who probably the moment Maximus would have lifted his finger, if he had just rushed out of the tent and said, Commodus murdered Aurelius, who's with me? They would have shouted him up as emperor immediately, and Commodus would have been, he would have had his head sliced off.
I know. And I think even in I mean, that tradition had deep roots, I think, and I'll stand to be corrected if I get this wrong, because I didn't get a chance to look back through this for today and reread it. But I think there were times where Germanicus's troops tried to declare him emperor. And
Yes,
he's
and he
like,
was. This is
no,
for
I'm not about that life. So what I don't understand is how you would possibly think that that would work, even if you're not a fan of Roman history. You're just going to watch the action or to see Russell Crowe or whatever. You would still think this dude is so beloved based on these shots that you took time to show us. Wouldn't they kind of rise up in response to that?
yeah, his buddy Quintus seemed to turn on him real quick. And then at the end, that traitor's still alive, and Maximus is talking to him like nothing, like he forgives him. Uh,
And wouldn't he go back to make sure? I'm not trying to, I haven't sat and done the math on how long it would take people to kill his family and what would be involved in that. Um, but why wouldn't you go back to where the soldiers were and say, Commodus just tried to have me killed? You can see the wound.
yes, all of this is because sometimes the screenwriters they can't have their people act as real people in the real world would do or sensibly because you need the plot to continue to move. I remember the first time watching this movie, seeing him gallop all the way from modern Austria, right, to the southwestern part of Spain in what seems like, I don't know,
3 days.
3 days. That's to me seemed a little ridiculous. The other part that caught me though is if he is sent, think about this. So Commodus is expecting Maximus to proclaim loyalty, right? Take my hand, I will only offer it once. And then Maximus doesn't. So you're telling me then in that moment, Commodus, decides to have Maximus taken out. And that's when I assume he also gave the orders to have Maximus's family killed, which meant that you would have had to get those guys on their horses immediately and ride at breakneck pace with only what I would see is like an hour or two ahead of time of a desperate man trying to get back to his family who has way more incentive to get there as fast as he can. Do you see where I'm
Plus,
going with this?
yeah, you're going to have to. I was trying to work my head through that. It seemed like he would have been able to catch him pretty quickly.
Exactly. But
So,
instead, the bodies look like they've been smoldering for a day or two.
and you got to figure those soldiers would have stopped at a fort or seven along the way.
Yeah, they're not expecting to be, they're not expecting that this is a super rush job. They got some time to, bed down for the night.
And the Romans were known for roads, so they would have followed set roads to get there. So it just, to me, to
In some
quote
ways, it
Fry
just the
from,
movie speeds up things when it could have slowed down. The other one is so he's staring at his burning family, right? Their feet. And then
Hmm.
he falls to the ground in exhaustion.
Right.
And then now he's a gladiator, right?
Okay, I missed that too, because I was so annoyed with it the first time I rewatched it that I didn't really care about that. But then it popped up today when I was skimming through it, and I said, "Well, that doesn't make sense. How did those guys get there? They just showed up at the villa. They were on villa patrol that day, and they were like, 'Hey, let's just take this dude and make him a
Oh,
gladiator instead of just killing him.'"
and you're telling me that that guy wasn't known? That guy probably wasn't the lord, the well-known lord of everyone there for miles around, right? You're telling me that random slave hunters are just hanging out on this guy's property, and this guy was a well-known Roman general, aristocrat, powerful person. Uh, again, is this nitpicking?
No,
It's the
no.
okay, good. It's the kind of thing where your brain starts to check these boxes and it starts to diminish. It just starts to diminish things. It's to me, it's just bad writing.
To quote Fry from Futurama, it's a crummy world of plot holes and spelling errors. And that is exactly where I feel like this movie takes us.
I'll give you another little petty thing. I was watching this movie. He's telling Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius is talking to him, and Maximus says, I have my 5,000 men here. And then he says, what, 3,000 of which are injured and maimed, and 2,000 that will never see their families again. And I remember pausing there and saying to myself, my Lord, you're a terrible general, actually. So even if you have, so if you have 5,000 men left, or so that meant what, 8,000 or 10,000, or actually 5,000, and you've lost that many men, maybe throwing fireballs in the woods. Maybe a lot of your men died burned or from smoke inhalation. That's actually a really bad, those are bad losses in a battle that you have won.
Yeah. And I don't,
I don't think the screenwriters really count the numbers or they don't really think about that stuff maybe when they're writing
but it
that.
goes back to you make this point though, what we were talking about earlier. We've kind of been dancing around this. You talked about how many people died in that battle or in that campaign or what have you, right?
Yeah.
Why was it so hard to kill Maximus? I don't, I, I, I'm just at a complete loss here. I, if again, you could have really made Commodus look awful and really show what's wrong with him instead of kind of giving into this kind of, again, another trope, this effeminate weirdo trope, which
Okay.
is
Yeah.
kind of where they were going. You could have just had him have him poisoned or murdered or killed under the cover of night, which when they were going to finally catch Maximus and bring him in for the final battle, they killed someone with a snake, right? I mean, I was again skipping through it. I didn't really care, but it it should not have been this hard to kill this guy, but he's like freaking Houdini or something, right? He just, you know,
Well, that's yes, it goes to a previous complaint that I had made. They they make these guys into sort of kung fu warriors, right? So yeah, he's led out in the woods to be killed, and then he does some trickery and defeats three, four guys. He also is an amazing swords person that from 60 feet away can throw a sword, right? He throws the sword and it kills one of the horsemen. And it's that sort of stuff where you start to lose me a bit. These aren't Jedi Knights. These are the whole point of a
now you
Roman.
don't know that. We don't know that he's not force sensitive. They never ruled out the existence of the force in this world.
Well, they certainly he definitely was force sensitive because that's it. That these guys they turn him into these ninja kung fu folks that can kill all these people on a dime. You see these YouTube videos of actual, people dressed up in armor fighting and jousting, and or even samurai guys. And again, you don't. you don't just throw a sword. You don't just whip a sword around like that. It goes back to one of the best.
Unless, unless you have the force.
It's
I'm pr
those swords are
when did they ever say he wasn't a Jedi Knight?
never
Okay.
because it does, you're right. It gives him the power to also somehow amass a cavalry charge in in a heavily wooded area, right? That's another thing in this battle scene. It seems like the linchpin of this battle is that he's going to catch them from behind, right? These Germanic biker gangs from behind. But again, it seems to me it would be very hard to be able to get much less 10, 20 horses together in a line for shock value than 200, 500. I'm assuming he had at least 200, 300, 400 horses.
All right. I think we've stumbled on the hidden meaning of this movie. Is really he is basically ancient Rome's version of Maximus, that is, of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay.
Oh, right. Or Qui-Gon Jinn, he's going to
No, no,
start
no, no,
talking.
no, 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 no. That's soft. I'm not hearing that. No, Qui-Gon, no,
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 you're right.
no, no, no,
Let's
no,
stick with the original trilogy
no,
by
no,
God.
no. Qui-Gon went out like a punk. He failed miserably, and he set up all the disaster that Anakin brought. So, oh, spoilers, everybody. So, but I'll say this: Obi-Wan, not necessarily the most powerful force wielder, but when it mattered, he always rose to the occasion, right? Who took Maul out twice? Okay.
That's true.
He
True.
took Maul out twice. He took peak Anakin, peak Vader, right?
Yes.
Then, and this is a lot of spoilers, then in the Obi-Wan show, which I liked, but they didn't really need to have you fight Vader again in that. They didn't need to have that again because we'd already seen that. You know what I mean? He took Vader out again after having cut himself off from the Force for years. Okay. The final duel between him and Maul, one of the best in the entire show. Okay.
And it was short and sweet.
I know. So what I'm saying is every time it mattered, Obi-Wan rose up. And even though, again, spoilers, in A New Hope, where he sacrifices himself, right?
Spoilers. Yeah.
He did that. Vader could not beat him until that point, right? Just remember that fight. Go back and watch it. He couldn't beat him until that point. He
Right.
willingly sacrificed himself to, and this will get you into Gladiator 2 now, Russell Crowe here,
Oh
set
God.
up the next person to take over and
His,
restore things. So,
his son, right? His son that we didn't know about in the first movie, actually. So this is getting a little bit of Gladiator too, but
yeah, but we've cracked the code here. We have figured out that actually this is just an homage to Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, which has given me a different opinion on the film. I'm with it now.
the subtext. Let's talk about actually another. I know that I know that this is a. I mean, we're really getting petty, but sometimes this stuff. So the Lucilla's son Lucius, which is this horribly cast. It annoyed me even during the movie. It's like this red-haired, freckled kid. I don't think of when I think of Romans, I don't think of red-haired, delicate featured, freckled kids. It annoyed me that they had cast that
Yeah,
kid.
because wouldn't they be more like Gaulish? I think they had kind of discussed that in HBO's Rome. Not to get this is going to
No,
be
no, the Italian,
okay.
yeah, the Roman. So from what we know about Roman Italians, the Italians in ancient Rome's day, I guess they would have looked, yeah, they would have looked Celtic, Gallic. There were all sorts of hair color and in the Romans, etc. But this kid, of course, this kid clearly looks like he came from, the Celtic Isles of Ireland, practically, right? Which I'm not sure the Romans even knew about. Um, I occasionally have a little
Wait,
thing.
no, they knew about Ireland.
Did the Romans at
Yeah.
the time of Aurelius know about Ireland?
Oh, well, I don't know about the time period, but they did know about Ireland. I
Okay.
think Caesar, well, I can't
No,
reach my book, but I think Caesar may have said something about Ireland. This is getting a little
yeah, we're
out of my
really
comfort zone, but I do know that at some point the Romans knew about Ireland.
so I looked up a little of this stuff. This movie was the screenwriter who wrote this movie was kind of an interesting he was an interesting guy. He came up with the screenplay basically. Well, he says he did because he took a motorcycle trip in 1972 throughout Europe, and he says he saw countless arenas, right? Just Roman era arenas, and he said, "My gosh, this gladiatorial stuff was very popular." He read a famous historical novel that some guy in 1958 wrote. His name just escapes me.
Daniel P. Mannix, Those About
Okay.
to Die.
Those About to Die, and this guy, if you read up on that guy, he raised wild animals. He was kind of a colorful guy. He was a circus guy. He wrote this book about gladiators that apparently had a lot of embellishment, but was very well read at its time. So that sort of inspired the screenplay. What is never mentioned in any of that stuff is, of course, that this movie in some way has been done before. In
Correct.
1964, you talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is ironic because Marcus Aurelius, in this big budget, it basically bankrupted, I think, a studio, the fall of the Roman Empire, with in 1964, with Alec Guinness, our
Which
famous
is,
Obi-Wan Kenobi, playing Marcus Aurelius.
and I've seen that because you recommended it to me, and that movie is way better than this one.
Okay, I'm glad look. That movie is slow, ponderous, but it is beautiful. It is holy moly. You see everything on screen. They don't make movies like that. I don't like the battle scenes. The battle scenes also have issues, but it's a beautiful movie, has beautiful music, and it's too long. And so, but it does essentially have the same story, and it ends the same way with a fight between Commodus, who's played by Commodus in that film is played by Captain Von Trapp. What's his name? He died a couple years ago. Who's the actor that plays Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music?
You are definitely asking the wrong guy, but give me a minute, I'll pull it up.
So, and the guy who plays the general that Marcus Aurelius
Oh, are you talking
wants
about
to,
Christopher Plummer?
Christopher Plummer, correct. And it has
Okay.
Sophia Loren. Sophia
Yeah.
Loren plays Connie Nielsen's role, Lucilla.
Yeah, she's great in that.
Yes, they paid her a ton of money, and they actually wanted to cast Charlton Heston, but he smartly said no because he said, "I've already sort of done a movie like that." And at that time, he had a decent nose for figuring out what would work and not. So instead of that movie, they cast his in Ben-Hur, his famous nemesis Messala. They cast that actor, Stephen Boyd, as the Russell Crowe's role in that film. I highly recommend that movie. Just if you want to see one of the last I mean, millions of dollars spent, cast of thousands, film. It's the last of the big budget movies of that era. I think that
That one and what Antony and Cleopatra too, I think. Uh
you thought the Elizabeth Taylor one?
yeah, the Elizabeth Taylor
That
one.
was earlier. That was 1960.
Okay.
But that almost took down I'm trying to think which studio that almost took that it brought down with it. Well, actually, that whole mid 60s era, you had this film, you had Lawrence of Arabia, and then you actually had one of the biggest money makers of all time, Dr. Zhivago. Uh, and then you didn't really see, well, I mean, I don't know. Did you see Big Epics, Patton, maybe?
Yeah,
Um,
so let me see here. I just pulled up Cleopatra, which was 1963, and it was
it
20th
was,
Century Fox,
I'll
but
say this though, it's ironic.
30
The
thirty-one
1964
point one, $31.1 million is what that
in
movie cost to make back then.
in
Good Lord.
1960 money. Yeah, that would be maybe half a billion today in some of that stuff. Oh, but the irony is that the 1964 fall of the Roman Empire, which tells the same story as Gladiator, ended the big budget ancient era epics. If I recall, that actually we didn't have many then, and in some ways, Gladiator brought it back,
Hmm.
which is kind of ironic. And then you and I have reviewed a number of films that came in the wake of Gladiator. Hollywood trying to basically follow that movie's success because Gladiator was a big success. It was the second biggest moneymaker of that year. It won Best Picture, which seems, I don't know, it just this movie reminds me a little bit of how watching Braveheart 30 years later, seeing does it age well? I still
I
think
don't think it I don't think it ages well. I think there's a couple of movies from that era that were really big that did not age well past that time period. I think
no.
this one is one of them. The
People,
other,
no, I think people still love Gladiator. In fact, anytime I told people I'm not a fan, some people get
but
visibly
okay,
annoyed with me.
who are you telling about that? Because there's movies like Fight Club that get more popular with people through each generation.
Right.
I don't think Gladiator is one of those movies. I think the people who saw it when it came out are huge fans of it, but I could be off base about that.
I think from what I see, people still sort of they revere that, or they think very highly of the movie. They love it. Again, I've had people get annoyed with me when I tell them that that movie actually stinks. I mean, I'm also look. I used to annoy my friends back in college when I told them, look, I'm sorry, I don't think Caddyshack is that good. I don't think it's that funny, and that was heresy. Uh, so Braveheart, I think Braveheart has now become very famous as well for being very historically inaccurate about many things. It brings me to, for example, the Scotsman portrayed in Braveheart in the battle scenes. They dress them as if they were cavemen, right? And so in Gladiator, that's the other thing. These Germanic barbarians are portrayed. They basically, as far as I can tell, they go to biker bars and they hire these guys as extras, and they dress. They dress as Paleolithic hunter-gatherers when in reality, the Germanic tribesmen of that day are a little bit more sophisticated in terms of how they dressed, and even their king would have had armor. And you
Right.
know, it's
I I though with this movie, I don't know if it's going to have appeal long term. I don't know about that. The other movie I was thinking about that famously fizzled out was American Beauty from a year before. That movie has
there
no,
are a lot of films,
yeah,
right, that best pick like Shakespeare in Love. Shakespeare in Love beat out what did it beat out? It beat out Saving Private Ryan, right? Dances with Wolves beat out Goodfellas.
not a fan of Dances with Wolves. That one's speaking of movies go on too long. And Goodfellas is fantastic. But I do want to kind of make this key point to go back to my baby boomerism view of this movie is Ridley Scott, Silent Generation. That's what he's a member of. Him making a movie that boomers swoon over is consistent with boomers being obsessed with their childhood. So it all fits together. And I did need to get that point in. But a couple other things about the movie, and then we'll go ahead and rank it, is why did he have to be a gladiator at all? Why not just lead a military revolt against Commodus per Marcus Aurelius's wishes?
Because Hollywood.
I'm
Because
just saying, just if you're gonna make a movie about a guy trying to restore the Republic, why are you going to make him a gladiator and take him from his position of already being a military leader where he could, I don't know, lead an insurrection, rebellion, mutiny, what have you, get declared emperor, and then march on Rome, as was the style at the time,
I'll tell you why. And
right?
it goes back to Hollywood again in the sense of this way. To our modern sensibilities, a because boomers, right? And
Right.
remember, boomers also had Richard Nixon, and
Mhm.
it would be difficult. I mean, imagine a lot of critics say in the New York Times, et cetera, but it would be very difficult to cheer for a military, right? A general taking his army and marching on Rome to, do you see what I mean? It seems it's
Yeah,
un-American.
I, I agree with that point. I do agree with that point, but you could make him a reluctant soldier like Cincinnatus. You could have just made a movie about Cincinnatus, which is kind of what they were trying to set up here, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, look,
you could
there
have done
are
that, but I do
tons
think
of
I
great
do want to,
stories out there.
yeah, and I do want to go back to your point because I think that boomers are more inclined socially to support authoritarianism than our other generations. So I think they gladly would have cheered for a strong man, but what they wouldn't have cheered for is a strong man who was actually not being a strong man, where he would have come in and said, I'm here to restore Rome and I'm going back to my farm now. Right. I think you could have done a movie basically about Cincinnatus where they say, we need you to be dictator. You need to be dictator forever. And he says, no, I'm going back to my farm.
Right.
I don't understand why he has to be a gladiator other than you can have these kind of cool one-on-one fight scenes.
Because you answered your question.
Hey,
Because gladiators are a very fascinating thing, I think, to modern folks, to all of us. It's because it sort of combines sport, right? It's recognized. The thing about the Romans that is often fascinating to people is they are so recognizable to us in many ways, right? They have in a sports arena for crying out loud, right? They have gladiatorial combat, which is not that far away from boxing, UFC, etc. They have chariot racing. They have, the Colosseum. Like you see, there are some scenes in that I actually enjoy that I said, you know what, I could see the Romans doing. The guy with the ridiculous wig being sort of an announcer.
right,
I could see that, right? They did have
right.
billboards. They did throw things into the crowd, contests and things, just like nowadays at a baseball game, they'll catapult
Mm-hmm.
whatever prizes out
T-shirt
at you.
cannon. Yeah.
Yeah. That I found because all that stuff is very relatable, I think, to a modern audience, but it has a patina of but then taking it that too far, taking that extra step of dying and bloodletting and that ethical boundary that probably to us seems very fascinating. In other words, they seem like modern people, but that the parts where they're not, I think, is what provides that thrill to a modern audience. And gladiators, I think, are a very easy connection there. I think people find that fascinating, I think.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that, but if you're trying to make a movie about restoring honor and nobility to a, a society, I don't know if the answer is to have a guy die after being a gladiator. I mean, I get you're maybe trying to do some trials about what the honest man has to go through, right? What the noble man has to go through, and he's going to have to sacrifice the most. I get that, but it would have made a more, I think, convincing narrative just to have him lead his troops and die on the battlefield after restoring order, right? That would have made a little bit more sense, would have been cleaner, and then would not have set us up for a completely absurd. The gladiators in Gladiator 2 are the only ones who are still fighting for a Republican Rome, which is just stupid. There's no way to put it. It's just stupid.
Yeah,
When we review Gladiator 2, we'll talk about how it's just an homage to this movie
it
done
is.
by the director, which is the most self-absorbed thing I think I can ever think of in Hollywood is I'm going to wait 20 something years and make a sequel to my own movie, which will tell you how great my first movie was.
I can't wait to the one thing about Gladiator 2 is I walked into that movie knowing full well it was going to be utter trash, and thus I had a blast watching it because it was Mystery Science Theater 3000 for me and my buddy. I had no illusions about what I was going to see, and it lived up to my lack of illusions. This movie doesn't do that. This movie hides its silliness. It hides its silliness with the music. It hides its silliness. Like Russell Crowe, apparently during the making of some of this movie, the dialogue, he said this dialogue is so terrible but I'm such a good actor that I will make it work. But he
He
crapped all
did.
over the dialogue.
He did.
Uh,
This movie insists upon itself. Not
it,
quite like Gladiator 2 does, but this movie does insist upon itself.
it insists upon itself, Lois.
Yes. I mean, I don't know where to begin with how bad this movie is, but I think we have nitpicked it enough. I think we are the only two people in the world who have this opinion of this movie. I will just say quickly on Caddyshack, as a 13-year-old, I really thought that movie was funny. It didn't age as well outside of that
My
realm
brother
for
likes
me.
Chevy Chase. I find Chevy Chase deeply unfunny.
Community, he was great in Community.
Was he? I never watched that.
Fletch,
My brother loves Fletch. I think it's fine.
yeah, I
Uh,
don't think it's a great movie, but he was good in it. I mean,
yeah,
plus
I
Norm was in that, right? From Cheers, the first one.
in Fletch.
I think so.
George Went. Uh,
Also,
maybe.
Porkins in Indiana Jones. Porkins from Star Wars. Check that up, internet. That's gonna blow your mind. Your lid's about to be flipped. I saw that on Reddit
Okay.
today.
Oh, one last connection. This movie does actually, to give this movie the veneer of respectability, it casts Derek Jacobi as the one good senator, right? I'm a man for the people, if not of the people, or something like that. And Derek Jacobi is famously of one of my favorite things. Again, I Claudius. I repeat myself like a broken record. I Claudius is the best thing ever done about ancient Rome. It's the original Sopranos. I highly recommend anyone who listens to this podcast to watch all episodes of I Claudius. It has that whole Germanicus Tiberius subplot. It actually has a gladiator scene where Augustus's wife tells the gladiators that go out there and give a good show. That's very well done. One day we will review I Claudius. Um, I think Derek Jacobi was in the wretched sequel as well, but I think he has a short. He's trampled or something in it. I
Right.
don't. Right. Just
Well, we're gonna get into the rankings just
all
in a
right.
second, but for the record, 1985's Fletch did star George Wendt as Fat Sam. You're welcome, internet. So he was in
Norm.
that. Yes. All right.
Norm.
We're gonna go ahead and rank this. All right.
All
Now,
right.
an all-around excellent movie is Alexander the Great.
Uh,
Surprisingly good, Claudius. Good but not great is Pyrrhus. Average, not good but not terrible, just generally forgettable is Probus. Awful is Ephialtes. So I'm going to let you go first because I have two rankings for this.
okay. I think you and I are thinking along the same lines. I'd say Gladiator is a Probus that fools you into thinking it's an Alexander. Many people
Okay.
think it's an Alexander, but if they actually spend a few seconds rewatching it and really thinking about it, they realize, maybe it's not an Ephialtes, but it's a Probus. It's not that good.
Okay. So I'm going to go actually with the movie as is. It is an Ephialtes
Damn.
because after you think about it and watch it, you cannot watch it and enjoy it. It's just not possible. If you think about the movie, it bothers you. Okay.
It
So
was a slog rewatching it again. You also said you had to fast forward a few
nope.
parts. It's a
Yeah,
slog.
I skipped by 10-second intervals a lot. But today, though, today we cracked the code. Okay. We got at the hidden heart of this movie, which is that it was for Ridley Scott a tribute to Obi-Wan Kenobi. And because the prequels came out after this, clearly inspired George Lucas to take Obi-Wan in an even harder, more powerful direction. So, with that, now that we've gotten at the truth, we've gotten into the guts of this movie and what it was about. I'm
Gladiator,
gonna
a Star Wars story,
I'm
right?
gonna give it a Claudius. If you watch it and understand that this
The
is
meta,
really
right?
ancient Rome's Obi-Wan, right? Because the prequels were not great movies,
They were not.
but Obi-Wan made them great. Okay. He was by far the best part of those movies. Okay. Although we are seeing today that the plot point about blockading the trade route leading to instability is becoming a little more prescient. So just like Ewan McGregor lifted those prequels up to another level, that without him, I don't know what they would have done. Russell Crowe is ancient Rome's Obi-Wan, lifting up bad dialogue and making this work. So watching the film as is, Ephialtes, but understanding its true meaning, we're giving it a Claudius.
And there you have it, folks. Everything eventually comes back to Star Wars.
That's right. That's right. So next one we're going to do is Gladiator 2. Oh,
Be ready, folks. Maybe we'll surprise you and tell everyone we liked it. I'm going to view this movie as a true fun. It's up there. I'm trying to think of like a fun bad movie that's so bad you are enjoying it while you're watching because it's so. For me, it was the mutant monkeys that they fought in one of the fights. Truly amazing stuff.
all right.
And then
I'm gonna.
the Sharknado part.
Oh well, let's save that. Let's
All
not.
right.
Let's not get into that. I'm bringing up our movie review episodes now. I'd rather watch Pompeii than Gladiator.
Yeah.
Troy is kind of on par with this movie as far as which one I'd rather watch.
Oh,
Troy's
Troy,
longer.
right. As you know, Troy,
Right.
Troy famously fell in my estimation. Like, wait a minute, that's another one that's actually quite terrible if you rewatch it.
Now, The Last Legion is worse than this.
Yes, but
The
we,
Eagle
but it,
is.
it should be, right? I mean, that was
I'd,
Ben Kingsley. Ben Kingsley trying to
yeah,
just pay for his summer house.
I'd rather watch Centurion than this, although it's close, but Centurion's shorter. The
Yeah.
Eagle's way better than this.
Of all those movies, The Eagle is the one that it's like I think it's the one that doesn't that holds up well. It does hold
Right.
up well.
And 300 is better than this, even though it's got a lot of issues with it. But I would much rather watch 300 than watch Gladiator.
I think I agree with you. I think 300 in some sense, I'm looking at more things while I'm watching that movie. And in this movie, I'm just waiting for certain scenes to end.
And you're gonna have to wait a while. So, because this movie takes its sweet time to get there. But we are going to pick up next movie review episode with Gladiator 2. So, we will see you then, Victor.
All right, I appreciate it. Enjoyed this. For those of you listening, sorry. Uh, we couldn't say we like this movie.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you want to find us online, go to the socials at Antiquity Pod for most of them. You can go to our website, classicalantiquitypod.com. You can call the podcast 540-632-0160. Ask a question, leave a comment. You will get on the air. If you have a question, either I will answer it or perhaps one of our guests will answer it. But again, call. We'd appreciate it. The theme music is by Brent Earhart. And stay tuned, folks. There are more episodes coming. I have to keep doing this because, as you know, the Classical Antiquity Sidequest is a podcast without end.